Shalom, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, a community webinar on Zichron Yaakov. We are so happy to see all of the participants with us today. We have over 113 people who have joined us so far. I would like to please let everybody know that this webinar is being recorded, and at the end, we will provide contact information in a day or two. After the webinar, everybody will receive an email that includes the full PowerPoint presentation and everybody's contact information. So we are happy to share all of the information that we will be presenting today. This Zoom session, this webinar, is a continuation of the community webinars that we have been providing in Nefesh B'Nefesh to assist you in learning more about different communities. The past year and a half has been challenging regarding making pilot trips to Israel because of the COVID situation, and we're thrilled to be able to bring information to you by communicating with municipal representatives and community contacts, people who are living in the community, to provide you with information. Now, the format of this session is going to be that for the first 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to be having a presentation on the community. Penina Solomon, who's a member of the town council, will be presenting about Zichron Yaakov together with her assistant Chava, and then we're going to have some time to speak with Heidi Goldsmith, who is also from the municipality, assisting with our Olim, and our own Sarah Chertoff, who is a colleague of mine at Nefesh B'Nefesh. She is a manager of a team of Aliyah advisors, and she happens to live in Zichron Yaakov, and she'll be able to share of her experience in Zichron as well. As we go through our webinar, if you have questions, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. We will not be looking at the chat, but only in the Q&A. And we will hopefully be able to allow time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. Please, if you have questions, they should be specific to Zichron Yaakov. We will not be able to provide information about the cost of housing or to provide recommendations for service providers. But if you have general questions about living in Zichron Yaakov, we will be happy to assist you. So at this time, I would very much like to introduce Penina Solomon, who is the one who initiated this webinar. She is the one who reached out to us at Nefesh B'Nefesh and said that she would like to share of her experience and her information so that we can better serve our Olim who are coming to Zichron Yaakov. So without further ado, bevakasha, Penina.
Thank you so much, Ellie. It's really a privilege to speak here. I feel like I speak to so many Olim individually about Zichron that it would actually be much more efficient to do a general presentation. So here I am. I am a Zichron Yaakov councilwoman. I sit on the municipality, and my family and I made Aliyah about 11 years ago. And I'll tell you a little bit about Zichron Yaakov's history. Zichron Yaakov was founded in 1882 by Romanian immigrants, Ashkenazi immigrants. You can hear more about this from our lovely First Aliyah Museum, which is here in Zichron, if you ever come visit. It was named after Yaakov Rothschild, who was the Baron Rothschild's father. He's the philanthropist that established Zichron. The first winery in Israel started here, and in 1912, Taimani Yemenite immigrants established another community. So that was the Sephardic community. Many of their descendants still live in Zichron. And of course, many of you know the story of Sarah Aronson and Aaron Aronson, who founded the Neely movement. They were spies for the British and helped overthrow the Ottoman Empire. There's another museum, a beautiful museum here in Zichron, founded in their home. So that's a little bit about the history. I'm going to turn this over to Chava, who's going to tell you a little bit about transportation and where we're located. Chava is an intern at the Technion, and she's been working with me on Aliyah this year.
Hi, I'm Chava Hasanoff. I am 21. I moved here 10 years ago from Teaneck, New Jersey, and I've been living here ever since. So as you can see on this map, Zichron Yaakov is relatively easy to get to from all over Israel. So we're about an hour from Tel Aviv, half an hour from Haifa. The train station in Binyamin is 10 minutes away, and it shortens the travel time to Tel Aviv, the airport, Jerusalem. You can see the approximate travel times here on the map. There are high-tech areas in Haifa, in Tel Aviv, and Yokneam, which is not on this map. Yokneam is about 10 minutes away, and Zichron is a bedroom community for a lot of these high-tech areas. Yeah, so that's where we're located.
Awesome. It's very, very convenient. I just want to add that there are intercity buses so you can get around Zichron without a car, but most people here do have cars. It's a little annoying not to have one. This next slide is probably one of the most important slides, the questions that I get asked. The general population of Zichron, you're looking to your left, is 26,000 residents. In general, it's about 75% secular, 15% Haredi, and 10% Dati Leumi. Like Chava said, it's a bedroom community for Haifa University and high-tech areas, and many people work in Tel Aviv. What I mean by high socioeconomic level, it's important to note that Israel designates number values to different communities, and from 1 to 10. According to the socioeconomic level of the people who live there. It doesn't mean that it's a rich town that has a lot of business like Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. It means that the people who live there generally have a certain level of socioeconomic above the average. So Zichron is socioeconomic 8. This can affect the amount of funding that we get for things like education. It's important to know this, for example, like in a place like Beit Shemesh, which is a lower socioeconomic level from Zichron, you probably can have school until 4 o'clock. Here in Zichron, it's until 1:30. So that's an important factor when you're looking at a town. What the socioeconomic level basically determines what the federal resources will be. And on the other side of the slide is the English-speaking population. So within the general population, which is 26,000 residents, the English-speaking population is about 15% of that, about 800 households. It's broken into 30% seniors, 70% families. There are not a lot of singles here, aside from single parents, meaning single parent families, as well as widows or widowers or divorcees, but not a lot of young single people. You can see the breakdown, 55%. It's pretty much a majority of Dati Leumi. 23% of the English-speaking population is Masorti, and by that I mean conservative. And then the rest are secular. There's a small and very sweet and warm Haredi community. A lot of you can see where the Anglos are coming from. A lot of the families are mixed marriages, like Israeli American or French, Australian, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a pretty diverse community in terms of the English speakers. Education, another important slide. I just want to define what I mean by mamlachti. Like you can see, there's 24 ganim, and they serve 3 basic systems, which is the mamlachti system, which is basically the public school system, mamlachti dati, which is the dati public school system or the religious Zionist system, the Haredi system, and the special needs system. So altogether, there are 24 ganim. There are 5 elementary schools. 3 of them are regular public schools, and they go from grades 1 through 8. The continuation of those grades is Tichon HaMoshava, which is a massive high school. It's co-ed, it's secular, and it goes from 9 to 12. You can see that on the other side of the chart. Yavetz is the Dati public school. It goes from grades 1 through 6. And then in grade 7, you have the choice between Pelach and the Yeshiva Tichoni. Pelach is the girls' school that goes from 7 to 12, and the Yeshiva Tichoni is the boys' school that goes from age 7 to 12. These are all, yeah?
Sorry, there's just a request to speak a little slower from the audience.
Sorry. I have so much information to pass on. I'm going to slow down. So that's basically the mamlachti system, which is the public school system. Keshet is part public and part private. The important thing to know about Keshet is that it's democratic and pluralistic. It's from grades 1 through 12, and it's basically a lottery to get in. So meaning you don't just apply for the municipality. I'll speak a little bit more about zoning regulations, but you can't just apply to the municipality and decide to go to Keshet. You have to apply privately, and it's complicated for an OLED to get in. So I'll speak a little bit more about that in zoning regulations. Now, this is a really important slide. I gave it a lot of thought in terms of what to present to you guys. And basically, this is built on all the mistakes that people have asked me about, or challenges, or things that people didn't know about. How to register. You cannot register to a school in Zichron unless you have an address in Zichron. That's the way it works. The minute you have an address, you can register. That being said, I realize that most families rent homes in August and in July, and they really are, especially where I came from in Teaneck, they're ready to, enroll in November. It's impossible to do that. You have to take a deep breath and relax, and look for an address. School visits, again, another thing that's very problematic. Even if you can get in, I know Corona, it's very difficult to get into Israel, but the Mamlachti, or the regular public school system, does not allow school visits. They won't allow you in unless you actually have an address in their area, and they don't really care whether you want to shop around before you find an address in the area of the school that you want. That's a little different with the Dati public schools. The Dati public schools do not have zoning regulations, meaning anyone who says that they're Dati or they want to educate their kid in a Dati system is entitled to come to the schools, so they usually do allow school visits. Zoning regulations are very clear. Of the 3 elementary schools, depending on what your address of the home that you rented, that's where your kid is going to school. There's no school choice. The Haredi schools are controlled privately. The admission is controlled privately. It's not through the municipality, and they have their own set of rules of who they are and are not allowing in. School here ends Saron. Saron means after school care. School here ends at 1:30. Like I said, we don't have a lot of resources in terms of education because we're considered a socioeconomic 8 town. So Tsaron is the after school care. There's public and private. There's a lot of different resources for Tsaron, but people who want to work full time generally look for a Tsaron after school. Chugim are other sorts of after school care. They usually start at about 4 o'clock when the parents come home to shuttle them back and forth to soccer or horseback riding or fencing or whatever. One of the most important things to know about Zichron is that it is a small town, and there is a very big difference between a big city and a small town. And the very big difference is that this is a village. For example, there is one Dati Leumi school. Your choices are very, very limited. So if you want your child to study synchronized swimming in school or calculus in 3rd grade, chances are that's not going to happen here in Zichron. It's a school that serves the community from here to there. If your child has special needs, you will not have choices. You will be sent to one school, and if that doesn't work out, you should move. So if you know that your kids have specific issues or need specific resources, you should think about going to a town like Jerusalem or Modi'in. I love Zichron. It's a great place to live, but it's limited. The resources are limited. There are a certain amount of schools, and there's a certain amount of resources that serve the entire very small community. So you can't really expect, I don't know, an English-speaking speech therapist that specializes in the letter R for 3-year-old kids. Like, you're probably not going to find that here. Social integration. Another very, very, very important point. Many people ask me about learning outside of Zichron. They're like, well, I fell in love with this school. It's in Binyamina, but I like to live in Zichron because the community is nice and it's so beautiful on the mountain. It's not a good idea to bring kids to Zichron and send them to school outside of Zichron for one very important reason. They need to make friends. They need to make local friends. They need to be able to walk to their friends. It's very, very hard, aside from the carpool, which you say you can manage, it's very, very hard. One of the most important things in Israel is your chevra, is your social group. And kids who lack chevra are at risk for all kinds of behaviors. So as Olim, bringing Olim teenagers, bringing Olim kids, puts your kid at risk for certain things. And of course, you're all great parents and, wonderful, and we'll keep an eye on them. But friends are so much more protective in the teenage years. And we see time and time again, the kids that start out going to school outside of Zichron eventually come to school inside of Zichron because of the friend situation. Olim support, again, with social integration, it's important to note that the Dati Leumi schools, like I said, it's close to 60% of the English speakers that are coming here are Dati Leumi. So if your child is zoned into a secular school like a Choresh or a Chita or a Nili, then chances are they won't have another English speaking child in their class, which makes the landing not as soft as it might be. So sometimes what I tell parents who are coming in with kids in Gan, even if they're not Tati, maybe sign their kids up to the Tati Khan because it's a softer landing and they can learn Hebrew, and then Kita Aleph, switch over to the secular system. That's another tip that I would give you. Mental health, children and teens. Another very important issue. Whatever issues your child had in America or in Canada, they will bring them with you. Don't expect them to disappear. Don't expect anyone to know how to deal with them. If anything, they will get even more difficult here because you won't have the English speaking support in order to deal with it. If that is your issue, maybe pick a bigger town, bigger city like Jerusalem or Ra'anana or Beit Shemesh. I keep saying this, but I'm just saying you're coming to a village. So you have to be able to work with the resources that we have. That's our biggest problem, is that people are just not prepared. They're like, oh, 800 families, that seems like a lot, but it really isn't. It can't support huge businesses to support English speakers for mental health, for occupational therapy, meaning it's definitely a challenge. Transition years, easy years to bring kids are into Kita Aleph, first grade, into Kita Zayin, 7th grade, and into Kita Tet, 9th grade. Those are very easy years to move your children because everybody else is generally new and they're starting fresh. Other years, a little bit more of a challenge. And the last thing I want to say is about Bagrut. The Bagrut system here works for 3 years. There's 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Do not bring a child to Zichron in 11th grade. Just don't do it. People do it, they fail, they don't graduate. It's literally impossible. The very latest that you can bring a child to Zichron and expect them to succeed is before 10th grade. And it better be a child who is willing to work hard, who is willing to study, who is willing to literally learn Hebrew as quickly as they can and go through the Bagrut exams without the grades that they would expect in America. I know that sounds harsh, but again, one more thing to note is registration in Zichron is in February. If you do not have an address by February, they're not obligated to give you a space in the system. That being said, they will. They will. They're not going to leave a child out of school. So that's educational challenges. I'm
Can I just add one more thing, Pnina, and I'm sure you meant with this, but there is no Ulpan for kids. There just isn't.
Yes.
So your child comes without Hebrew, you're gonna have to pay privately or have them struggle, or there isn't.
And I'm going to add one more thing to what you said about Olim support. The government gives, Misrad HaChinuch, the Ministry of Education, gives about 3 hours per child of Olim support. If you send your child to Yavetz, which is the public Dati school where you have 10 Olim that year, then that means that you'll have 20 hours or something like that for the principal to play with and put your kid in classes, and you'll actually get support. If your child goes to a school where there aren't Olim, it's very possible that they'll forget to hire a teacher and your child will get 0 Olim support for their first year, and they'll just kind of flay and drown, and it's very challenging. So we can speak privately about that and how best to play it.
Right, Pnina, I just like to add to that because this is very important for those who may have challenges regarding the Sha'ot Olim that the students are entitled to. That's one of the things that they should be in contact with Nefesh B'Nefesh. We work together with the Ministry of Education to ensure that the Olim receive all of the hours that they're entitled to.
Right. But that being said, and that's amazing that you do that. But that being said, the Ministry of Education may give the hours to the school and they may give it to a teacher who doesn't speak English. So that is not appropriate for that particular child who happens to come from America and not from, Ethiopia or wherever. So it's not necessarily, they say in Hebrew, muvan me'elav. It's not necessarily, I'm losing my
Understood.
11 years. Yes, it's not necessarily understood that those Olim hours will give you what you need to get your child to be a straight A student, just like they were in America. So it's important to manage your expectations. What I tell people when they come is year 1, you get your Olim hours. They're going to teach you a certain amount of Hebrew. The only thing that you as a parent needs to make sure that your child does is don't fall behind in math. Get a tutor. I don't care. just go outside the system and make sure they're where they need to be in math, because math is cumulative and it's very hard. And B, make sure your child makes friends, because if they make friends, they will learn to speak Hebrew, they will feel better, everything will be better. You're only as happy as your least miserable child. I strongly believe that because I experienced it. And just those two things, you come on Aliyah, you have a lot on your mind, math, friends, done. Everything else you can catch up in your second or third year. So I could talk for hours about education, but I realize we have a time limit, and I don't want anyone to shut me off. So I'm going to keep going. Neighborhoods, over to you, Chava.
Sorry about that. So in Zichron is, as was said before, it's not a large town. It's about, I'd say, 40 minutes to an hour walking from end to end. There are 8 or 9 large neighborhoods, not that large, but substantial. The 4 neighborhoods that English speakers generally live in are the Moshava, which is the central area, Mula Yaakov, Neve Baron, and Chalomot. Chalomot is an apartment, it's an apartment neighborhood, and the rest of them are single homes or duplex homes. Rental prices, the apartments are 4,000 shekel plus a month, and single homes or duplexes are 6,000 shekels plus per month. It varies. Those are just examples, but rentals are very, very, very hard to come by in Zichron. So if it's something that you need to look for immediately. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so we have here a list of the synagogues, the shuls. The Magen David, the star here, symbolizes the amount of English-speaking attendees. So El Yaakov, the main shul, has many English speakers go to. Moed, also it's mainly English-speaking shul. Ve'ahavta is a conservative shul, also many English speakers go there. Some of these other ones on the left, they are more, like Mula Yaakov, Neve Baron, Neve Oved, those are neighborhood shuls. Kolot is a Dati Leumi pluralistic shul. Sulam Yaakov is Reform. There's Chabad. Not many English speakers go there. There are other Haredi shuls in Ramat Zvi, Chazon Ish, which are the main Haredi areas.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, since not all of our participants may
Oh,
understand
that's
the
a very
difference
good.
between Ashkenaz Sephard and Sephardi.
Oh, yes, that's a very important thing. So Ashkenaz is Ashkenaz. Not
European.
exactly sure. European, yes. Sephard is it's Spanish. It's countries that were sent to from the Spanish Inquisition. So that's also Eastern European countries. And in Israel, those two types of shuls are pretty much the same. They're mixed. And Sephardi is Asian, not Asian, but Middle Eastern, North African types of Jewry. And those are the prayers and everything is substantially different.
Yeah, what I would say is also, just to add on what you're saying, Chava, is that the Sephardi shul, it's called an Eidah. It's basically, if you walk in, if you're used to davening at your standard Middle Eastern, standard Eastern European synagogue in the States, and you walk into a Sephardi shul, it will not be a recognizable prayers, meaning it will not be anything that sounds familiar to you. So generally people who daven Kurdi or Taimani, meaning they know what type of shul they would like to belong to. Meaning it's fairly, I would say that most anyone who comes from the States who davens at your typical shul in the States, except for specific Sephardi congregations, will fit in more on the slide on the left. And the reason is that you can see like where the Anglos are, meaning you can see where the stars are. There are very few. Most of the people in the Sephardi shul come from France. I feel like more they're English speakers, but they're more French, or Anglos that marry French people. They're more of the Sephardi side of the table. So, you know, just to give you an idea on that.
So I just like to add, as far as Nefesh B'Nefesh Olim, we really see a very, very diverse group of Olim of different Jewish affiliations, and also mixed between Sephardi and Ashkenazi. So I think that Zichron has a lot to offer everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, but also be careful, meaning like, don't just say Sephardi, say North African, you know, so that you're actually in the right place and you recognize the tefillah. So the prayers. So that's interesting, because I've sent people to the wrong place in the past. So I just want to introduce Heidi. Heidi is our amazing liaison. She works with social services, and she's going to present the next slide.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank Penina for all her work. She is not paid. She's on the council. She works 50, 60 hours a week. She's amazing. So, and she's a great partner. My role is a few hours a week to assist the Department of Social Services. They noticed that more and more Olim, especially English-speaking Olim, were coming, and they asked me just to help out. It was kind of open, you know, kind of description, do what they need. It's a terrific role. So I help Olim once they've come here, and not as much. I get plenty of people asking for information. I'm interested in coming, and I basically say, I send them a letter. Here are the places to look, and here is about the schools, and here, you know, stuff like that. But so what we have is one of the resources that we started was on the municipality's website. We have a whole section with lots of information just in English about resources and book clubs and study places and lots of that. There are also a number of Facebook groups. There's also a listserv, which tends to be older Anglos using this serve. I'm looking for a plumber, I'm looking for this, and people are very helpful. So I basically help people when they come. Plus, some people have trouble with Bituach Leumi or with all kinds of things. One-on-one, there are also group things. I noticed there were a lot of seniors, and we have a fair number of seniors that have come because their children live here. So they've moved to Zichron, and I noticed they were kind of not connected. So we have now what we call the KEF Club. Like KEF is fun. It's also community education fun. And every month we do a trip somewhere, we do a lecture, and it's a lovely group. I have about 150 people on that list. So there is that. There also is another organization here called ESRA, English Speaking Residents Association, and they have a fairly active chapter here in Zichron. The community center offers different clubs, including once a week, read in English, read the Hebrew newspaper together, English classes. They offer a bunch of things. So there's now at the mall at the bottom of the hill, there is a movie theater when people are not afraid to go to movies anymore. There are lots of movies. We have a entertainment center, Beit Nir, where there are plays and concerts and stuff like. There are all kinds of recreational and social activities for seniors. So it is a very nice place to land if you're an Anglo senior with or without Hebrew. So that's one thing. Health, you can always find an English-speaking doctor pretty much in each of the kupot, each of the health clinics. You can find English-speaking doctors. A lot of people in Zichron speak Hebrew, not everyone in English, but a lot of people do. There are also a fair number of volunteering opportunities. You can tutor in English. You can work at the nearby park, Park HaNadiv. You can work one-on-one. So there's all kinds of things for seniors to do. And if someone comes here and I find out they're from Manchester, England, or they're from Teaneck, New Jersey, I'll hook them up with someone their age that I think they'll get along with, and I'll call them up and say, could you take them out for coffee? And they're pretty quickly taken in. Also through the synagogues, that seems to be the major social place here in Zichron. People are very friendly, and our town's so beautiful, so people kind of feel large and they want to help each other because it's such a nice life here. I'm biased. Education, I completely agree with Penina. I came here with a 10-year-old son, and they didn't. And even though he'd been in Jewish day school, so had the basics of Hebrew, wow, did he struggle. It was really hard. And we went to secular schools, and I'm in Vahafta, the Masorti or conservative community. And there were rarely English-speaking kids in his class, or maybe one. It was very challenging. And the schools kept saying, what do we do with these Olim? As if Israel doesn't have experience in Olim. But that's the reality. Now my son feels great that he went through the, quote, non-Anglo school system, and he's like a real Israeli, and he's proud of it. But it was a struggle. And I would say any 11 years old and on, it would be very difficult to bring your child into the secular education system. But anyway, we're on to seniors now. So it's a nice life for seniors. There's so many cafes, there's so many nice people, there's so many synagogues to choose from. So that's a really good place. Can you move to the next slide, please? And I'm here to help people that do arrive. Can we move to the next slide?
Sure, 1 second.
Sure.
Somebody's gonna just, here we go.
If people have
So-
specific questions, you can ask Penina or me.
So thank you so much, Heidi. Heidi is really an amazing resource and a fantastic hostess of our KIF events. She's just wonderful. Anyway, so a few more small things. This is our last slide, and then we'll open up to questions and stuff like that. So pilot trip etiquette. It's very important to realize that Zichron is a small town. I've said that like 50 times, but I'm going to say it once again. We don't have a project director. We don't have someone working full-time to set you up with a place to go to for Shabbat or take you to Bituach Leumi or any of that stuff. And also we're a small community. So it means that there's really no bandwidth for Olim who are shopping. It does not mean that we don't want you here. It does not mean that once you come here, you will be overwhelmed with invitations once you live here. But again, you can't call me on a random Tuesday and say, please take me around Zichron because I'd like to get to know the neighborhoods. I just don't have the ability to do it. You can't send me an email and say, fix me up for Shabbat. I want to sleep one place and eat 3 meals at 3 different places where kids are my kids' age. It's just really, really difficult to do. I started doing it 10 years ago, and I very quickly was unable to do it. As we can see, there's 160 people on this Zoom. There's maybe 800 families in Zichron. The math just doesn't really work. What I do recommend to people is to rent a Zimmer or an Airbnb, to buy takeout. I put the, Hertz Handlers. There are shops that sell takeout here. There's opportunities for socialization. If you go to synagogue or if you go to the park, it's harder for secular families to socialize. But again, everybody's on the weekend out in the park. If you have small kids and you come to Zichron for Shabbat, then that's where they're going to be. Like I said, the municipal website that Heidi mentioned, there's a lot translated there, Facebook groups, community websites. If you know that you are going to join a particular synagogue, then it helps to reach out to the people in that synagogue, then they can kind of reach out and welcome you. Realtors are invaluable. We have a lot of wonderful realtors here in Zichron. Some of them are even Anglos themselves, and they can help you. They can show you neighborhoods and show you around. So that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Penina. This is a wealth of information. Very, very much appreciated. And I very much would like to hear from Sarah Chertoff, who actually is a manager at Nefesh B'Nefesh, and she recently moved to Zichron, and I'd love if you'd share with us, please, your reasons for moving to Zichron and how things have been going so far, and whatever information you'd like to share with our prospective Olim.
Sure. So I moved to Zichron with my family about 2.5 years ago. I have a son currently in 2nd grade at Yavetz and 3.5-year-old twins in the Dati Gan system. We moved here when our oldest was going into Gan Chova, into kindergarten, partially because we knew that we wanted him to make friends before going into elementary school, which was wonderful. We speak English at home, but all of my kids were born here, so they're fully bilingual, but it's actually really nice. My son has kind of become an ambassador for some of the Oleg kids in his class because he can translate to them very comfortably and easily. We were looking for a community that was warm and welcoming and small so that we could know our neighbors and know the people in the community that we would be part of. We were looking for a place that wasn't totally homogeneous. We wanted a mix of different types of people from different backgrounds, a strong religious community, but not, again, a place that was only religious, that was the only, or only a certain type of religious, that was all you would experience around town. We were looking for a place that was easily commutable to major centers of work. My husband commutes to Tel Aviv every day. And with the train, it's really not a big deal. From when he steps out of his office and gets to the train station and then takes the train and then gets home from Binyamin, it's an hour and a half, which might sound like a lot, but you could live in certain places in the center and sit for an hour and a half in traffic, just getting into Tel Aviv. And it's beautiful. Zichron is literally nestled on a mountain overlooking the ocean on the edge of a forest. During lockdown, we live around the corner from the back door to Ramat HaNadiv Nature Reserve, and I would take my kids and we would just walk through the forest, during the COVID lockdowns as a way to get out and breathe the fresh air. And we really love it here. We really do know our neighbors, and that's exactly what we were looking for. The school, our kids are really happy in schools. Their teachers have been wonderful. And again, they're little, so we'll see how things go as they get older and we head towards high school. But for now, it's really, it was the right choice for our family.
Sarah, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Houston. I made Aliyah almost 14 years ago. I've lived in Jerusalem and Givat Shmuel, Haifa, before we settled in Zichron Yaakov. So I've sort of lived in all kinds of different places, and knew pretty early on that I wanted a smaller place in any of those cities.
Fantastic.
Thank you. But Zichron's, hang on one more thing, Ellie. Zichron's also big enough that we have a Rami Levi and a Shufersal. We have all of the different Kupot Cholim. We have multiple bank branches. So that was also important to us, that we didn't have to drive out 15 minutes to go to a grocery store bigger than a tiny corner makolet. So we really sort of have it all close by.
Just one more thing. A few people have asked in the Q&A, where are the nearby medical facilities? I know it was on one of Panita's slides, but just Rambam Hospital and Hillel Yafe are half an hour away, but none in Zichron. Just.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is to address a question, and that is, somebody told me I'm looking for a Chardal community in Israel. What does that mean, and would I fit in Zichron? Who would like to address that question?
Nina.
All right.
Nina.
So Chardal actually technically means mustard, but in this particular situation, it's Haredi Dati Leumi. So again, Israel is complicated because the same, hats that people wear and the labels that you see in the States don't exist here, because there are different polarizing factors, such as the army, such as the school system. So basically what you're saying is that you're Chardal, but you're also American. So I would say is there are two answers to your question. For Chardal Israeli, which is Haredi Dati Leumi, which means probably more religious than the typical religious Zionist. Like you see, I'm wearing a baseball cap. Somebody Chardal would probably wear a sheitel, a wig or something like that. But those are all externals. It just means that it's somebody, generally it means somebody who is Zionist and also very Orthodox. That's probably the definition. Zichron does have people who are Zionists and Orthodox, but like I said, because there's only one school, then they throw all the kids from the spectrum, from the people who are interested in separate swimming, for example, to the people who swim on Shabbat. So you're talking about throwing all these people into the same school. Your kids are unlikely to get the kind of education that is going to be very specifically Chardali. And the one other thing that I would say is a good way to measure a school on the basis of whether it's Dati Leumi or Chardali or Haredi is to look and see if it's co-ed. Yavetz, the Zichron school, is co-ed, boys and girls until 4th grade. And then when they have enough kids, they split into boys and girls. So a more Hardali place would probably have the option of only boys or only girls, like single gender tracks from Kita Aleph. So the answer is yes, you can make it in Zichron, but you're going to have to fill in the blanks on your own in terms of, in terms of education.
Thank you very, very much. We have time for another question. There was a question that was posed to me regarding employment. Is there local employment available in Zichron Yaakov?
Not much. I don't
Well,
think, Penina,
it
not
depends-
much, a little.
It depends if you speak Hebrew. For example, and it depends what kind of employment you're looking for. Meaning my daughter found a job in a day because she was she's a sayat or a helper in a tsaron, meaning in an after school care program. That's very easy to find. Meaning if you're willing to work for minimum wage, you can find a job very easily. If you're wanting to work as a waiter in a restaurant, it's very easy. If you're looking for professional employment, you're probably better off going to the centers. And if you don't speak Hebrew, it's hard to find a job. That being said, when we put out a survey recently and we asked how many people need help finding a job, and the response was maybe like 1% who were looking for assistance finding a job, and about 40% of people here were working, within Israel, not overseas.
Thank you very much. So we're very much at the end of our webinar right now. And I just wanted to ask any of you if there is anything that you would like to say to our prospective Olim thinking about making Aliyah to Zichron Yaakov. We're all good?
I just want to say I look forward to seeing all of you. And I hope I wasn't at all negative, but yet realistic. And feel free to reach out and email and, call me. And if you have specific questions that weren't covered here, and b'hatzlacha on your journey.
And it's a trade-off. I think it's so beautiful here. We're on the top of the mountain and we look at the beaches or we look at the Carmel. I look into the Carmel Mountains every morning and watch the sunrise. It's gorgeous. And the people are nice and it's diverse, but it's a trade-off with education. It's a trade-off, just having certain resources around that big cities would have. You don't have it here. So it's a trade-off. It's what's important to you at this stage of life that you're here. So, yeah.
Great. So thank you so much, Penina, Heidi, Chava, and of course, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to remind our Olim who participated that we will be sending out an email in a day or two that includes the copy of the recording of this webinar, as well as the PowerPoint and all of our contact information. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We really want to assist you with your research. If you are intending on making Aliyah within the next 8 to 10 months and you have not yet submitted an Aliyah application, please go on to the Nefesh B'Nefesh website and fill out the online application, and then we will be able to assist you with your Aliyah to Israel. Thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to being in touch. Kol Tov.
Bye.
Bye. Toda rabah.